I am I am not sure how this Zoom is being facilitated, but I guess I'm privileged to have other people facilitate Zoom stuff for me in meetings. um, so my name is Clare Strawn. I'm in Eugene, and my work primarily over the past 10 years or so has been to look at social ecosystems. I call myself a social sculptor, connecting the dots, And what I have found is that mostly we've tried to have like a panel discussion of some subject, and we invite people in different organizations to come and be at that panel. And then the panel, people can just talk about what they're doing. They don't really talk to each other. They don't do the cross-fertilization work that I'm excited to hear about in this meeting. And so that's been a puzzle to me about what is that. So I have a couple questions and for us to explore that dynamic. And then I have some ideas about how to break down that dynamic. And then finally, I have some living examples of people and locations of people that are actually doing that work. And I saw Rose is here. One of those examples is Townsend Local 2020. So if you feel so moved, you can share about that, people who are involved in that. So I have a PowerPoint, but I don't think I'm going to show it to y'all. I'm just going to use it as my own speaking notes. Except for there's a couple places where there are actual pictures. So I'm curious. So the question for discussion, and you can just raise your hand and speak up, is why, oftentimes we talk about silos, that our projects are in silos. And I want to know why you think we have that pattern in the movement of creating silos. And if someone needs me to clarify what I mean by that, please speak up also. So Doris.
I would say the main reason is because of all those, excuse me, all those nasty isms, racism, sexism, not realizing that we are all the humans of the world, all the beings of the world who need to be in unison. And I have organizing history back to the 60s with anti-war movements, and people have asked me, what did women do in organizing scenes there? It wasn't much. I mean, we did a lot of collating, but we were not appreciated for our intelligence or other skills. Anyway, I think we need what I call neo-humanism, which is the gift of knowing that all beings are worthy.
Thanks, Doris. Cam?
That was really, I second that. And also on the back of what I've really white supremacy is things like intellectual property, and even in the even in like permaculture design and the regenerative movement, there's silos, and there's people who really go to great lengths to basically keep a bubble, and it is about money at the end of the day. So
Thanks, Cam. John?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, the challenges before society and the planet are so daunting. I think there's sort of safety in being more narrowly focused. You feel like this is something I can wrap my arms around and actually work on. And otherwise, I'm just overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of challenge that seems to be exponentially increasing. So I think that's one of the elements that kind of drives that.
Thanks. David?
Yeah, to kind of follow up on what John was saying, I also feel like, we're in silos, and we have limited time, and we're trying to get something done. and it's just hard to make progress and get our thing done, and also be connected to the other systems that we are connected to, and to fully realize that, you know, the process approach is what we need. We need to understand and recognize what our inputs are, what our outputs are, and how we each feed and give to the next process, but also that we need that support for ourselves as well. And it's just easy to become kind of bogged down in our own projects.
Yep. Stephen?
Well, for me, the thing to recognize is that the silos come from our fundamental view of the world of everything is separate. And everything, all the rest leads from that, including the inability to hold complexity. So we have to silo in order to survive, because I can't think of everything, but I can kind of narrow my focus to a few things that allow me to deal with the world.
Yeah.
And if we recognize that complexity and the interconnectedness, then we could still operate from our specialties without them needing to be silos.
Good point. Philip?
Yes, I'm going to speak a little bit to add in a layer of the psychology, and that's looking at what the experience is like when we try to connect, because when multiple groups are connecting involuntarily, because just who we are, there are power dynamics that are in place, and a lot of our limitations come from these power dynamics, and the way that manifests a lot of the time is experiencing being part of some collaboration or some group and experiencing sarcasm, criticism, judgment, things like that. Those have been big inhibitors in my experience, and there's ways to deal with that, but I think we need to put our minds to acknowledging that some of our limitation is around power and connection and esteem and prestige, etc.
Yeah. Jan, and then we'll move on.
Yes, you've certainly got a response to this question, and I certainly agree with other people in appreciating Stephen saying about this basic sense of being separate, and I think so much of modernity has been about reductionist thinking. So if we can reduce it, we can control it, we can have success, and we can know that the outcome will be for sure, at least that's the attempt. And then we can avoid the messiness and vulnerability. I mean, that's, I think, one of the desires, is to not be vulnerable, because that doesn't fit into modernity's plan of success and happiness and singular outcomes that we can control. And it's way more relational. And so I think that in the reductionist plan, then economics and education has both been servant to that assumption of reducing things to knowables, and then you just get experts that really know that well. And so to get out of that is a big turnaround, and it's time consuming, it's more relational. In the longer term, it works better, but we think short term. So it's a very much a habit of that I think modernity has really almost got us addicted to. Thank you.
Great, great, Jan. Thanks for that. Because really where we're getting at is that this is a transition point about our culture and our sense of who we are in the world, from this kind of individual, this is my territory, this is my specialization, this is my intellectual capital or whatever, to hey, where I want to go, I can't do it alone. and everybody here, I think, already gets that. But we are kind of in some ways imprisoned into these patterns of relationship. And so I want to suggest some ways, and there are people here who are professionals in this and skilled at it, and we have a lot of wealth here to take this on. But I think it's an important component of what this work is about. So I've had some thoughts about it, about how we can approach it, and I'll share those thoughts, and I welcome your contributions. So first of all, I think when you think in terms of systems and systems theory, boundaries are important to systems. They're about the identity and integrity of what it is you're doing, right? And so it enables us to actually accomplish stuff because everybody can't do everything. So what I'm suggesting is what I want to do is put forward some considerations for people in groups or projects to think through as a way of not getting stuck in the siloed pattern. Okay, so and some of this is not new. I mean, all of it's not new, but so when you're forming your project, you know, what is it that drives you to do that? You know, most of us, it comes out of a personal passion. It comes out of our intellectual understanding of, you know, what's important to make whatever change we want to see happen. It comes from our value system, all these kinds of things. So as a group, I think it's really important for conversations to be had amongst people who consider themselves bounded around some project. Okay. And the first one obviously is what are your values? What is your mission? What is the thing that you're united around? Another is the geographic location of your project or what it is you're trying to do. Another is the social sector that you represent, for instance, housing or food or something like that. And another is your positioning in relationship to power and to resources. So I think it's important to kind of map what your project is in relationship to your social ecosystem, into your context. And you can make pictures. It's hard to make pictures in this format, but so, you know, finding your edges. And why are edges important? Permaculture and social and systems theory has a lot of understandings about the importance of edges. Doris.
The edges are where the change happens, I think.
Why is that?
Because things maybe aren't organized in quite such a tight way. There's a little more filtration and instability.
Aha, so from the margins, you can disrupt things more easily. What are the other reasons that permaculture teaches about edges? John? You're muted.
I think in a way it's sort of disruptive. You know, in other words, there's when you have a boundary, it's things intersecting and they may not be entirely compatible or it causes disruption. And I think that disruption really creates opportunity. I mean, it sort of opens people's minds to something beyond where they've maybe historically been more narrowly focused. So I think that's part of the critical function of understanding edges and their value.
Thanks. Cam?
Humor me for a second. I'm going to kind of take an Indian perspective on it because I've spent a lot of time in India and I'm half from that side of the world. Dualistically, edges can be things like disruption, exclusion, this or that, and then there's also the non-dual view where they're a connection point, and that's really the word yoga means to bring into union. So if you put milk into water, that's the yoga of milk and water. But if anybody here practices yoga and has ever experienced the benefits of it, I think that's another way to look at it at edges, and it is that there are places where things connect, and that doesn't have to be a point of harmful conflict.
Yes, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, the edges are always the most exciting place because that's where the action is, right? That's where the growth happens. That's where the evolution happens, where there's an intersection of different influences coming in to stimulate a new evolution of process, whether that's emotional process, sociological process, ecological process. It is the synergy of multiple biomes commingling so that you get the best of both. And yes, it can be conflict, but it also can be that opportunity
Exactly.
to engage in the next phase of where the succession is going to take it.
So let's take this metaphor and look at that, use that lens in how we look at our organizations or our silos of activity. And I'd start identifying what are the edges of what I do. I'm going to show a picture. I taught a class, co-taught a class in which we designed a food forest, a community food forest. And okay, let's see. I need to make this bigger. And so I taught the social permaculture side of it. And one of the things that we did is an exercise of defining the edges that we had relative to this project. I'm sorry, this always happens, right? There we go. Back. Okay. So you see the slide now? So this was a food forest, and the center part in the blue was the class of people, and we mapped out the relationships. That's the threads, the network of threads. And then we kind of imported or stole the ideas of zones from permaculture to think about what does it look like in terms of social zones. The first zone was the people in our community most likely to support this project. So that had to do with what is the edge of food sourcing, of permaculture, agricultural, regenerative kind of interests. And then the next zone was more geographic. It was the people who live next door. And that was important to identify because those are the people who are going to be first line of interaction with the food forest project itself and most immediate beneficiaries, and hopefully the people who will help maintain it, right? And then finally, the larger zone of community stakeholders, people like the Parks and Open Space Agency of the city who kept putting problems in our way, and but also allies. Who are the allies? People who have related needs. The homeless industrial complex, as we call it here in Eugene, churches. Different kinds of agencies and organizations that would have an interest, the schools, the local schools. How could this be a benefit to them, a resource to them for education? And then furthest out were non-local supporters, people who had subject matter expertise, people who, were part of a larger network of community. So this was just one example of how to maybe conceptualize your edges and your relationships with those who are proximal to your project. Any thoughts while I get out of this one? Okay. Stop share. Okay. Sorry, while I putter around with technology here. So some questions to explore inside of your group, and I was hoping that we could kind of break out and have smaller group discussions on some of these with your own projects. And can I get someone to volunteer to help facilitate that? Jump up to the front of the
What do you mean by help facilitate with that? You mean make the breakouts for you,
make the
Claire?
breakouts.
That's my role here.
Oh,
as
who's
This
speaking?
is Stephen, the tech
Oh,
host.
Steve, hi. Great. I've been asking who was going to do that. So how many people are here?
We have 26 people. That includes you and me.
So let's make 6 breakout groups randomly. But before everybody goes, I just want to say, originally I was thinking that people who are working on a project together would want to do this exercise together to explore their project. But we can take about 10 minutes now and just work together in a small group to address some of these questions, which I'm going to put into the chat. You know, you can use your own project or a hypothetical project of how you might do this. And the purpose, the outcome of this is, if you're doing this at home with your organization, your project, is you can map the resource flows of yourself in the context of your larger community system. Make sense? Okay.
Yeah. How long do you want the breakouts for, Claire?
Give it, let's see, we've got 30 minutes. Give it 15 minutes.
Okay, and then they're ready. Just let me know when you want to
Okay,
start.
go ahead. Oops.
Interesting. Oh, because I forgot to uncheck. Oopsie. Let's bring people back. I'll let you know when they're all back. Okay, everyone's back.
Well, thank you for being self-organizing in this section, you all. I apologize for the messiness of it. However, any opportunity to talk together is good. So moving forward, I could have a couple people just give a high point or two about any insights about what are the points of breakdown when we attempt to move from the siloed paradigms to the interactive relational paradigms on an organizational level. I heard some good stuff. Does anybody get burnout? Doris, thank you.
I could offer one little bit, and maybe my partner Michelle will add to it. She's from New Zealand on the North Island, and the river has acquired personhood because of the Maori pressure, and the Maori have enough seats that they could make this happen. And they've gone a little to the right wing in New Zealand in this last election. So they're working on a deep collaboration to regenerate this port. And it's such a beautiful story. And maybe Michelle can tell you a little bit about her experience, because she's trying to make connections with Maori.
Okay.
Are you there, Michelle?
I don't want to go there right now, Doris. Thank you,
don't
for that
have to.
example.
don't have
And Michelle, thank you for that work. One thing that I heard is people get stressed about trying to we have one more meeting. I have to go to another meeting to have a relationship with this other issue that I know is adjacent to my issue and that we share common things, but I just can't do it. Raise your hand if that's been your experience. You know, so part of that has to do with how do we organize internally to our organizations. And my suggestion is that, first of all, we shift our thinking from projects around those boundaries of our projects to being nodes in networks. Okay. And we shift our timeline from these are the objectives of my project to where are we going and who else do I need to go with to make that happen. We don't, very rarely do we as an organization analyze the context that we are in, look around and do this exercise of who is adjacent, you know, what are the stakeholders, that kind of thing. And then internally, one of the things I learned from one of the projects I was a consultant on is that leadership involves, in my view, three main responsibilities. One is responsibility to the mission. Another is attending to internal relationships in the organization. And the third is attending to external relationships. So those things should be on the agenda, right? Rarely do we talk about external relationships in our meetings and our discussions. And then the main point that we have some great examples of is that what is really needed for us to be able to prosper in a collaborative and relational community is shared infrastructure to take care of the overhead of all of that work. Everybody doesn't need a web manager. Everybody doesn't need a fundraiser, you know, that type of thing. Everybody can't do everything. And Rose, I have a picture here of Port Townsend's organizational concept, and I'm going to share screen here because I went up there to visit them, and they worked with the Proud Institute briefly, and they're very inspiring. So I want to share this with you as one example in our bioregion that we can take. Whoops. I'm sorry.
Well, and just, it's for Local 2020, right?
Yeah, Local 2020, yeah.
So it's a really great umbrella organization for a lot of the different organizations that are doing really good work in the area. And they're exemplary in the sense of being, you know, like helping facilitate getting the word out about what things are doing. And they're a really wonderful model of, they work on transportation and other environmental things, housing, social issues. So just having a model of something like that is really we're fortunate to have them right here.
Yeah, can you see that picture now of the organization?
Yeah.
So some of the things that does is they have a website with links to all the organizations and interest groups. They have a newsletter. They have connections with people who work on financing primarily. They have an event that somebody mentioned earlier that's, networking for the whole community, comes out and finds out how they can volunteer and how they can participate. And also, representation, a voice at the city council or different places like that. So not every organization, not every individual has to, fulfill every function that's needed if you work as a community. Thanks, Rose. And any questions for Rose about that? Okay. And so if you think about that, then you're distributing the infrastructure burdens. And I think it comes out a lot around funding. And there's a lot of exciting, how do you build a local economy? How do you build community wealth? Conversations going on in the new economy movement, and building economic wealth is something I think we have to pay attention to. If we want to bring young people into our work, we probably need to pay them. How do we build our capacity in that way? Another example is in Italy, Emilia Romagna is a region, a bioregion in Italy, and they have over, I don't know, more than 50 years built since World War II. Built their whole regional economy around cooperatives. Now, not only do they have major industries in cooperatives, they have a whole system of infrastructure, what they call secondary cooperative institutions that deal with finance, that deal with business development, with education and training, with research and development. Now that starts to sound very similar to this system of bioregional centers that Joe is proposing, right? So the more we can build bioregional resources that are participated in the broader network, the more energy is freed up than between in the spaces in between. And there's another project in India called Timbuktu Collective. They deal with things like mostly regenerating their watershed there, but their activities have to do with people with disabilities, organic farming and marketing, rural enterprises, animal husbandry, alternative banking and credit, legal aid, counseling, ecological restoration. So all those kinds of things feed into a cooperative center, which provides a social infrastructure for all of the different individual projects. And I really think that that's the vision of where it is we want to go with all of our different work. So I'm going to stop right now. And I'd like to open up the floor for other ideas or examples that people would like to share.
There's something I want to share. Hi, my name is Brett. I'm calling in from Portland, and we're coming to this a little bit late, but something that's resonating with what you're saying is really just like the power of fun within all of this work. So I feel like, and you spoke to it a little bit in terms of like that kind of burnout that's very common, and like attending meetings, just what feels like for the sake of meetings and that kind of thing. And really, like, I think when finding the community and finding those strong relationships, when coming together provides more energy for yourself than not attending those meetings. I think that's the what we're after, you know, and I think that's part of the solution as well. It should not be depleting to be building a regenerative movement. It should be, yes, regenerative to self in that. And so, I mean, if anyone has tools or examples, I mean, just in sharing a good laugh right now, it's like that, you know, that is regenerative, right? So it's like, yeah, just wanted to.
Okay, now we got to do laughing yoga.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a good chuckle. Tom, you're with City Repair Project? No, you're not Tom.
Yeah, I'm so,
Some of
yeah,
us.
so I am, Quinn is, Sean who's over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic project in Portland, and they actually do physical, creative, fun activities that addresses all kinds of different needs in the community and brings people together to experience that. And your work is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need money. Yeah. We need money.
We need money. Well, that's a collective project that we got to look at, you know. Yeah. I was talking to someone yesterday or earlier today from England. There's a project there called the Preston model about how they channel resources, wealth into the community grassroots. So Google Preston model and see about how we can do that. Okay, I'm going to
Claire,
go ahead.
I apologize. Would you repeat what you just said about where they're doing that where?
In England, the city of Preston, it's called the Preston model. They also have a project in Cleveland that's similar. And the idea is that there's a lot of nonprofit institutions in a community who have a commitment to the community in their mission statement, in their location. And they have things like reserve funds and retirement funds and general wealth. And so what the plan is that there's a localized way to invest that money in the community rather than in the global market. And that feeds the wealth of the whole community.
Now, that's important. That's some of the things I've been trying to talk to the folks in Whatcom County about and some of the other places. So that's an existing model.
Yeah, it's a very successful existing model. And Mel, I'm happy to share my resource information about that with you. But if Google New Economy Projects and Preston model, and there's a lot of really exciting ideas about how to build wealth in our communities for what we want to do.
Another source is Democracy Collaborative. You can Google that.
Good. Thanks, Brad. Democracy Collaborative in Boston. Well, thank you all for putting up with the rough edges of this conversation, and we shall all emerge together into a new world. Ciao.
Thank you.
Yeah, Steve, what's next?
Thank you. Well, Philip is next with a presentation, which, let me look at this. What is it called? We don't have a name for Philip's presentation.
Oh, yes, we do.
Well, we don't have it on our schedule. Brad?
We do. It's just on the agenda.
Okay, it's on the agenda, not on the schedule. Anyway, Philip can introduce his own. I'm going to stop the recording so we can start a fresh recording for Philip's.